Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with eNCA. Now we continue with this story. Struggle stalwart Aziz Pahad passed away last night at the age of 82. Messages of condolences have been pouring in. Pahad was Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs between 1994 and 2008. The ANC says it remembers him as a patriot, freedom fighter and servant of the people. Pahad's fellow struggle stalwarts who spent time with him in exile in London, Ronnie Kasrils, is joining me now live in studio. Thank you so much for coming in to speak to us on this sad occasion and sad day. You know, you're a person who spent time with him in exile. You were much younger then, I'm assuming more resilient. What kind of person was he from the times that you grew up?
He was a lovely human being, absolutely lovable, very kind, actually sweet. People loved Aziz Pahad. It's such a blow to his wife, Angela, and to the Pahad family, to all of us in the liberation movement and the nation here, but internationally. He was immensely sociable. He loved people. That's why he was such an outstanding Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. He should have been a minister, but his icon, President Thabo Mbeki, believed so much in Aziz. If he had been the minister, Mbeki wouldn't have had him so close to the breast and the heart. And that's why he remained a deputy. He supported President Mbeki immensely because he was a consummate diplomat, and the diplomatic corps everywhere in the world, they'll be shedding tears along with the rest of us. I was very fortunate to meet him. As you say, we were young and vibrant and so on. We old people now. Unfortunately, Aziz became very ill these last years and battled on with huge illnesses. Heart, basically. His wife, Angela, so supported him. He kept going. But the last months, especially with his brother Isop's passing, it was anticipated Aziz, who was much more ill, would go before him. It devastated Aziz. But it's been tough these months, and Angela and Meg Pahad and family have so helped him, the whole family. But I remember him and Isop, by the way, meeting in London in the early 60s. I'd come from training, military training, and from Tanzania. They'd come to England to study with Mbeki at the same university.
Yes, there's a picture of
I'd
him, actually.
heard about Aziz, but I worked in Durban. He was from here, the Joburg crowd. And when I was in Dar es Salaam, people like Mosi Mullah, Adile Jasset, they said, "Do you know Comrade Aziz and Isop?" And they were surprised, no. And they said, "You didn't know him?" And it was because he's so popular. But I was in MK and underground a lot. So it was by the time I get to London in 65, and we took to each other, and Isop, the whole Pahad family, amazing family, actually so much part of South Africa's history and legacy. Two brothers who so adored each other because they thought as Siamese twins. There are a lot of brothers in a big family. It's quite touching, and don't think they didn't argue. But it would come from Isop, who was the kind of tougher guy, you know, as sweet and always amenable,
so
diplomatic.
I guess it makes sense why then in around 1966 it was actually Aziz who started an anti-apartheid movement in Europe because of his popularity.
Well, look, there were a lot of people who did. There was Ethel de Keyser and Ruth First, etc. So there's not one person. People shouldn't make that error. But him, you know, Isop and others, Joe Slovo, all sorts of people, were very much part of it. But he was in great demand, going around England and Britain, Scotland, Ireland, Wales, blah, blah, London particularly. He had such a following because he would flash his smile, he would engage, people wanted him, he spoke very well. let me just tell you this. There were so many people there and back home.
Yeah.
In Africa, he didn't and couldn't remember people's names. And I caught this because to him, everyone was, hello, chief, male or female.
So you realized.
And then I realized he's using the word, hey, chief, male or female, not chieftainess, because it's tough to remember people's names. But he did it with such aplomb that, it was charming. But don't misunderstand me, because you can have charmers who aren't sincere. Aziz Pahad was so sincere to the bones of his body, came from his heart. He had a great mind, but he was a warm, loving individual. There'll be so many people crying their eyes out, missing this mighty stalwart, as everybody's calling him.
Yes, yes.
So I know that there's so many people who are speaking and talking about this wonderful career.
You've explained why.
And you can imagine, but they mustn't leave out this aspect of a human being loved by his family, his wife, Meg Pahad, the sister-in-law, that Pahad family, the kids, favourite uncle Aziz, as Amina Pahad said to me last night, and others were saying to her, my wife Amina, everyone who knew him. It was very sad going to see him these months. He struggled very much.
Quite a bit.
Fortunately, at the end, it was a peaceful passing. And I handed to the doctors, and Comrade Faisal Randera, a veteran, known to the Pahads in exile, something of a distant cousin, big family extension. And he looked after, in addition to all the specialists, who I can say this, months ago, they said to Angela, the wife, look, intensive care and all that, he must go home. He doesn't have long to live. We thought that he would pass long before Isot. He's such a fighter. 6 months ago, they gave him a few weeks to a month.
And he fought on.
And going to see him in this period until very recently, he would smile, he would wave at you, he was battling. He even says to Angela, when I came there with Amina quite a few months ago, and he was in a bad state, but he wakes up to greet us, and then he gets a bit chatty, and he says to her, hey, let's have a nice dinner party for Ronnie and Amina. Let's take the names down. A wonderful, truly 100% human being, 100% South African patriot, 100% Communist Party. He was a Communist Party for a long time. 100% ANC, 100% for Thabo Mbeki, and as a diplomat. And in the underground, from London, when we formed an underground group under Dr. Yusuf Dadu and Joe Slovo, Jack Hodgson, we were part of that, worked closely together. Very serious. The Boers were looking for us. They took people out, assassinated, and so on. They bombed the ANC office. Aziz was committed. It didn't bother him.
It didn't bother him that this was happening.
We used to sneak out onto the parks of London at night to test out our propaganda devices. One was a bucket bomb, which was harmless to human beings. But we worked on a project for Oliver Tambo and the Communist Party to bring international recruits into South Africa when things were so bad after Rivonia and our underground structures were smashed, to bring people in and to mount a propaganda campaign using these innocent leaflet bombs from buckets in marketplaces, taxi ranks. It couldn't harm anybody. It's like fireworks going on. And there was an occasion that I'll never forget, and we joked about it, when we experimented with one of these things. It was like a rocket that went up in the air, devised by Jack Hodgson. and it lost course with a heavy load of leaflets and came down, and it came shooting to Aziz and me. We were horrified. We jumped behind a tree and it exploded on the tree. We came out laughing like hell. And look, he was part of the Muslim community,
yes,
etc., not devout, etc.
Yeah.
Look, you belong to your community, you respect it. But I was going to say, we went straight to one of what's called the London pubs to get a solid whiskey
after
or two
that incident.
To knock it back. We were shaking. He was fun to be with. He's going to be so missed, and this country has lost such an outstanding, heroic figure who was working on Palestine issues, Polisario, in international work, and on the ANC's revival with the veterans. He gave everything to resuscitate this.
And I think that's where I wanted to come in and ask you, those 2 pointers that you've given. He was an ANC person through and through, working with the veterans. I just wonder what people in his stature and yours, who form part of the previous NEC since until around 2007, that is considered until today as the best one that the ANC had, what his thoughts were of the ANC today. Did he think it can actually be revived? But also, number 2, I came across a statement from 2006 when you were still the Minister of Intelligence, and you were talking about security policies around the ANC when it comes to the Muslim community, and just assuring that community that, you know, you are not, there's not going to be anything not peaceful around the Muslim community. Just talk to me about those 2 issues, what he thought of the ANC today and his fight for the Muslim community to be seen the same, just briefly.
Okay, I'll reverse it, because as important as the Muslim community are, and to the Pahad brothers, the more overriding significance is like his view on the country as a whole. So let me say that both Isop and Aziz, who were ANC to the core, and had been in the Indian Youth Congress as they grew up, had that concern and commitment to the Muslim community. And they're not religious people, by the way. We need to say that. But they respected their community and the community rights and customs.
Absolutely.
So, as with Brother Isop, so with Brother Aziz, who most likely the funeral will be by Saturday. I know that with the Muslim rights it's very quick, but his son from London, Sam, needs to come here. So there is the allowance that it can be put off. And they had that deep respect for the community. Back in 2006, after the American, under Bush, declaration, war on terror, and it was Islamophobia, it was affecting the world, and it still does.
It still does.
They had the guts to stand out, and others did as well, from the ANC and Communist Party here, to call that to account. Aziz worked so hard back in the 90s even, in relation to weapons of mass destruction, then the war on Iraq by Bush and Blair, right?
You know what I'm sad about, Dr. Kasrils? I have to wrap it up, but it's never enough time to speak to someone like you, especially about the rich history of South Africa. But I've run out of time because we have to take the viewer to the next bulletin. I'm so
talk too
sorry.
long. You see, with Aziz Pahad, you can go on and on and on.
I can see
but
that.
He wanted the revival of the ANC. He said the veterans, and he worked with them, will be a key element. We must believe, we must work for
and
it,
maybe listen to them as well. Yes, I think what's important is also to listen to them as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Kasrils,
it's a pleasure.
For coming through.
Thank
and sorry
you.
for cutting you there. A very passionate Dr. Ronnie Kasrils talking about his friend and comrade Aziz Pahad, who passed away yesterday at the age of 82. That concludes the first hour of All Angles here on eNCA.